What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Sit Down Saturday. Today we're going to be talking about addiction. Don't worry, I have heard you loud and clear. I will be doing a Takara versus Fans Toy Shockwave. I know it's an old bit of business, but I think it's still worth taking a look at, especially because of how long the distance and time was between releases. There's a number of things out there that I think people have started becoming concerned about that I may have forgotten. I can assure you that I haven't. For instance, I still have the curating video coming. It's just taking a long time to get all the materials I need to do a nice, thorough explanation of everything. Bayverse Breakdown Part 5 is coming. I actually had to buy that thing on DVD in order to do it, so that's coming too. I just need the 3 hours or whatever it is to sit down and watch it and take notes and break it down and all that kind of stuff. But today we're going to be talking about addiction. We're going to be talking about, obviously, the psychological elements of it, not necessarily the biological elements of it, because it's not really an addiction. Do you know what I mean? Not in the same way heroin is, right? But before we do, we have to do a little bit of cleanup, everybody everywhere, and talk about the events of last week. So let's go over them. Last week, Sit Down Saturday on investment. Honestly, we don't have a whole lot to cover there. Went over kind of smooth as silk. It's always nice when I feel like, man, at least I've explained everything thoroughly enough where even if someone disagrees, they understand where I'm coming from, because that's what I ultimately care about, is that the information is being brought forth in an easily digestible and palatable way. However, I have realized that on the entitlement video, while it did go over better than I expected, there are some people that still don't understand. A gentleman recently commented that if you get a salad and you get, a wrong salad, don't you send it back? Yes. And that's what I'm talking about with that line. Like, if you order a Caesar salad, let's say, are we familiar with the Caesar salad, ladies and gents? It's very easy. It's lettuce, it's cheese, it's croutons, it's maybe chicken or shrimp sometimes. Anchovies are put on there in very rare circumstances. I always ask them to be held, and Caesar dressing. And I prefer creamy over the more oily or vinegary type. That's just a personal preference. Now, if I order the Caesar salad, this is perfect, right? So if I order the Caesar salad, I'll give you two examples. If I order it and I order it without anchovies, right? And it hits my plate and there's one anchovy on it. I'll take the anchovy off and I'll place it to the side and eat my salad. If I order the Caesar salad and it's smothered in anchovies, I have to send it back. Let's take the dressing method, right? So I order my Caesar salad. I prefer a creamy Caesar salad dressing rather than the more oily one, right? So I order it and it's more vinegary and oily and liquidy rather. And it hits my plate. Okay, here's the problem. It's not my preference. It's not what I wanted. But I didn't know that it was going to be this versus creamy. I just ordered a Caesar salad and I'm taking a risk on it. And the restaurant isn't wrong. It's just not what I wanted. Now, for me to throw a fit and a tantrum over that, that's inappropriate. But I can always say, well, I know not to order the Caesar salad from here in the future. It's not what I like. That is, unless in the menu, it said it was going to be a creamy dressing. But if it didn't, and I ordered it presuming it was going to be what I wanted, it came out not entirely what I wanted, that I gotta bear down and eat. Hope that makes a little bit more sense. My point is that there are lines, there are variables, but there are borders as to what is acceptable and what is unacceptable in regards to what you feel you are entitled to. There's a line. Something comes broken, something comes damaged, all that stuff, send that stuff back. Something comes, like, for instance, my X-Transbot Scourge, right? If you remember the review, it had like this dust all over it. I said it as if a cocaine addict sneezed all over the thing, if you recall. I can just blow that off with a little bit of pressurized air and we're good to go. I don't need to send it back. Like, it's an acceptable loss, right? Like, you just sort it out and you keep it moving. Just a couple of examples, but I don't want to get too into the woods on that. I think the point was overall well made. Just don't get lost with the forest from the trees. Do you know what I mean? The bumblebee, the helicopter thing is an Action Master thing. Got it. Still think it's dumb. Got it. I do want to say one thing I wish I would have done in that review is I kept saying this isn't the IDW design, and I understand that it's not supposed to be. I should have gone into a conversation on that review of how it's confusing. I knew it wasn't supposed to be. I wasn't judging it based on that. It's just a personal preference. So that one was on me. I gotta eat that. That's my mistake. I should have explained that a bit better. One last thing I almost forgot. Shout out to Brian Brink for the chart this week. You can find him on Enter the Realm or Breaking the Mold. And if you look at our chart, it's not looking good. It's not looking good at all. If you compare it to the yellow line, you see we're getting ready to enter the spike phase. But the spike phase on the yellow line only happened because the barge ended up getting back. And we're still significantly far away from Unicron getting back. In fact, with 9 days, as of this recording, left, we're not even at the halfway mark. So it's not looking good. And depending on which way it goes, we'll have a conversation about it one way or the other. I did hear that all of the pre-orders from all of the other sites, whether they be independent distributors or Takara Tomy Mall, I did hear that those numbers haven't been accounted for yet with this data. Don't know if it's true or not, but it's what I got. Alright, so that pretty much brings us to today. The reason why I want to talk about this today is actually twofold. So on one hand, I think we all know that this can become an addiction, right? On the other hand, what happens when you start detox? I can't tell you how many PMs, DMs, emails, texts, email that I'm getting saying I'm thinking about selling it all. I'm getting it more than I ever have, and we're going to talk about why that may be. Before we do, I want to make one thing super clear. I am not in any way, shape, or form trying to compare this to a real substance abuse problem. I have substance abuse problems in my family. I come from a long line of substance abusers. That being said, I would never belittle one's biological dependence upon psychological dependence of a harmful substance to buying action figures in a serious manner. When I compare them, I'm comparing them for the sake of an agreed upon, established idea that we both know and understand to then juxtapose against the action figure. That's it. So if you're struggling with substance abuse or you know people in your family that are, I'm in no way making light of their situation. I have it in my family as well. My hat's off to anybody that understands and can deal with folks that are going through it. Let's begin. There is a neurological element to this though, and we have to be honest about it. Any addiction can really be formed with repeated exposure to a stimulus, which can then create compulsive seeking behavior. It can be broken down into three main things: tolerance, dependence, and addiction. So when people usually discuss tolerance, they're talking about the relative potency with repeated administration of the same dose. And the reason why I want to talk about that is because I remember getting small packages in the mail and having that being the thing. Right? Now I'll get a couple Marvel Legends in the mail and I won't even skip a beat. Sometimes I don't even open them until I'm ready to review them. And I'm not talking about the box, mind you. I'm talking about the package it came in. Because my tolerance and excitement level has gone down with repeated exposure to the stimulus. And therefore, the potency of the dose has lowered. Let's continue. The next step would be dependence, which would create withdrawal symptoms when the use is terminated. We're going to circle back to that one in a bit. And then there's full-on addiction, which is persistent use, even in the face of these circumstances, social, financial, or logistical harm. Now let's explore what creates this a bit more with behavioral conditioning. And where does this come from, right? This comes from a rewarding response. That's a psychological thing. We all have it. We joke about it on Nerd Rage, calling it the dopamine drip, right? Your reward response. That is what ends up conditioning your behavior. So when you get that package in the mail and you open it up and you set it on the shelf or whatever, and that dopamine drip hits and you have that moment of happiness, that moment of euphoria, for lack of a better term, that's that rewarding response. So you chase that, right? That's what makes the dry spell so hard. That's when we start complaining, myself included, or criticizing or getting angry or going on rants, sometimes I do, when we don't get that rewarding response, right? Because we've been conditioned behaviorally to expect our little treat, right? Little puppies that get the and then get fed the treat. Now, what creates the chronic use of pretty much anything, including harmful substances, is the speed of the delivery of the reward. So the faster we get the reward, the more likely we are to develop the chronic behavior. So, let's look at the history of this thing, right? In regard to third-party transformers. There was a time where if you look on my channel, there was almost a release or two every week. Now, look on my channel, and while there may be a release or two every week, the pocket is different, right? A lot of legend stuff, a lot of movie stuff. Whereas before, it was all G1 Masterpiece. So I was getting that dopamine drip regularly. Creating a dependency, conditioning my behavior, creating excitement, creating passion. None of these things are necessarily bad things as long as I'm being responsible with my finances, which I relatively was. And am. So then that drip begins to slow. Then those rewards begin to slow. My behavior has not changed. So what has happened? I start developing different dependencies. I start getting into import figures. I start getting into Hot Toys figures. I start looking at quarter scale statues. And at a certain point, I have to ask myself, as you should be asking yourself, why would I be getting into this stuff if the initial collection, which I kind of went full steam ahead on, continued to deliver the rewarding system? And since it hasn't, in order for myself not to detox, I began looking at different substances, unconsciously. Star Wars was the easiest route of travel, which got me into the Hot Toy stuff, and then that couldn't be delivered as quickly as I needed it to be either, could it? So DC became the next logical choice for me. And then I went into Marvel, and I have acquired a significant Hot Toys Marvel collection. And you know what? I'm not even that big a fan of the universe. I'm a fan. I like it as much as the next guy, but I don't like it nearly as much as I think I like G1 Transformers, honestly, and especially DC and Star Wars. But the behavior had already been conditioned. And almost without me knowing, I fell right in line to continue that reward system, to continue that dopamine drip, to continue those little moments of nirvana. The truth is that most human behavior is a learned behavior, which many psychologists would agree is true of addictive behavior as well. And the truth is, all behavior can become unlearned if we choose to. So ultimately, at the end of the day, if the behavior isn't harmful, then there's no need to really examine it for the conditioning of changing it unless you want to change it for some other sort of behavior or some other state of your well-being. But as long as the finances are in good shape, family's happy, etc., it's not like it's a harmful thing, right? And you're not hoarding and creating some sort of fire hazard in your house. You're fine. The reason why I really wanted to address this is because I wanted us to take a look at the landscape. More people that I know than ever are unloading their Transformers collection. Started off with my buddy Tyler, who usually is ahead of the curve in a lot of things corporately anyway. And Chris, Gort, countless people that I'm hearing from online writing me saying, should I sell all this stuff? And I think the reason why is because the fear is finally starting to set in that maybe this stuff isn't going to get made. Maybe your G1 masterpiece collection is not going to be completed. The reward system has severely slowed down, and as a result, the detox is beginning to take place, and people are making personal decisions as to whether or not to get out or change the reward system. We had a pretty decent conversation about this on Nerd Rage this week on episode 208, Iconic Icons. And in that episode, we suggest that maybe collecting patterns are more like a series of whirlpools. And this whirlpool may have your Transformers, your Gundam, your whatever the case may be, and it cycles like this. And as you get to the outer rings of what you're collecting, it sends you into this other world. And this other whirlpool is going a different direction apparently, but it's fine, you'll change directions with it. And you're going into Hot Toys, you're going into Mezco, you're going into whatever, and then this one kicks you into this whirlpool after you get tired of not getting your reward system there. So there is two components of this, right? As long as you're enjoying the ride, then good for you. The other component is, what are you chasing? And only you can answer that. And I've been asking myself the same question, and I'm not sure I'm ready to answer it yet. I'm not sure if I have the tools necessary. I think I'm ultimately chasing some sort of snapshot of my love. Some sort of tangible, three-dimensional Polaroid of my passion. But I think growing up in the 80s, growing up in the collect 'em all era, I'm also chasing this idea of completion. This idea of a fully established and a fully realized franchise. And I think the more I get closer to realizing that one of them will be incomplete, faster I begin to switch gears to try to complete another. And that might be at the core of my addiction, which it is. And it's every step of it. It's every dopamine drip. It's the box on the porch. To be honest, for me even, it's the review process now. And then it's the figure on the shelf. So, I say all that to say this. If you're going through some hard times in regard to where this collection is going and you're thinking about unloading it all, just make sure you're 100% comfortable with it. My advice is to box it all up, put it away for 6 months or so. If you don't miss it, get rid of it. If you do miss it, hold on to it. It's not about the money, it's about sending a message. Thanks for listening, thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.